The show begins with 4 teenagers lost in the forest. The first is Jake, a sporty teenager who lives with his mother because his parents are separated. The second is Felix, an eccentric boy who loves strange music and nature. The third is Sam, the handsome teenager every girl at school likes. And the fourth is Andy, the studious one who dreams of studying medicine or law. We see Sam eating something, and when Andy wakes up, he asks him what he's eating. Sam tells him it's jam, but Andy is shocked to realize it's actually rash cream, not jam. Suddenly, Felix hears a strange sound, and Jake tells them to move. Sam notices a strong storm starting to form, and as the storm closes in, they try to escape. To understand what's happening, the story goes back 24 hours earlier. Felix is writing a new song inspired by the 4 natural elements: water, fire, earth, and air. His father, Ken, tells him to stop, which annoys Felix, so he leaves his room and meets his brother Oscar, who is in a wheelchair. At that moment, their mother, Cassie, enters with a thermometer and asks Felix to call his father because Oscar needs to go to the doctor. Oscar insists that he's fine and wants to go to school, but Cassie sees that his temperature is high and insists he needs a doctor. Felix goes out and meets his friend Ellen, asking her to forge his mother's signature. Ellen suggests they just skip the trip altogether, but Felix says it's mandatory and asks her to sign. He jokes that forgery is her superpower. Ellen laughs and tells him that if she had a real superpower, she'd use it for something more evil, like stealing, not faking a signature. Felix tries to convince her that the trip will be fun since they'll spend time together and enjoy nature, but Ellen replies that she doesn't even like nature. Meanwhile, Jake and his mother Sarah are hiding from a man from the real estate office who's demanding the overdue rent. Sarah tells Jake to get moving so he won't be late for school. Jake says she'll be late for work too, so Sarah decides to confront the man and tells him that instead of bothering her, he should go collect the rent from her ex-husband Gary, since he's the one who should be supporting his son. The man replies that he can't get any money from Gary. Jake leaves sadly, thinking his father is a failure. On the other hand, we see Andy's father and grandmother trying to stop him from going on the trip, believing it's too dangerous for him because he suffers from several allergies and could die from an insect bite in the forest. Andy decides to run away from them and goes to his father, convincing him that if he doesn't go on the forest trip, his future could be affected and he might not get into medical or law school. His father asks what the trip has to do with his studies, and Andy insists that the trip will teach him many things and help him work as part of a team. Later, Sam arrives at school with his mother and siblings, and his mother tells him not to be late for the trip because she's prepared his favorite food. After a while, they get on the bus. Each student takes their seat, and Mr. Bates, the teacher, tells them the trip will be in the forest. He explains they'll be divided into groups of 4, each required to walk 7 kilometers using a map and a compass to meet at a marked point. During the journey, they'll study the plants and animals in the forest. He also tells them he wants to break the social barriers between them, so he will choose the groups himself. No one will be with their friends. They arrive at the forest, and Sam notices a girl watching them. He tells Mia that she scares him and imagines she's a witch, while Jake mocks him, saying she might turn them into zombies. Ellen replies that she wouldn't find a brain to eat in Jake's head anyway. Then Mr. Bates starts calling out the group names, and when Ellen finds out she's in Mia's group, she gets annoyed. Bates then calls out Andy, Felix, Jake, and Sam, telling them they're in the same group. Andy gets excited, thinking their group is perfect since it has both brains and strength. Mr. Bates tells each group to choose one person to carry the map and reminds them to return by 1:30 for lunch. He also explains that by 4 p.m. they should have finished the hike and gathered to head back. As they start walking, Felix notices Andy walking very slowly. Andy explains that his backpack is heavy, filled with food and equipment. Sam decides they should go back and remove the extra stuff since it's only a half-day trip, not a 5-day one. Suddenly, Jake notices that their classmate Trent is ahead of them. He gets annoyed, blames his team, and urges them to move faster so they can win. Felix tells them there's a shortcut they can take to reach the endpoint before everyone else. Jake gets excited and rushes ahead, even though Andy warns him it's dangerous. As they move on, they realize they've gotten lost. Andy asks Felix to let him see the map, but Felix refuses, insisting he's the one in charge of it. Sam tries to check their location on the GPS, but fails, telling them they're in an unknown area. They admit they're lost, and suddenly, the map in Felix's hand flies away. When they try to catch it, they fall down a slope and discover they've lost both the map and Andy's backpack. Sam suggests using Andy's watch as a compass to find their direction, but he's shocked to realize it's just a digital watch. As they keep walking through the forest, they find strange charms hanging from a tree, which makes them uneasy, but they keep moving. After a while, they come across Andy's backpack again and realize they've been walking in circles the whole time. Sam hopes there's food inside because he's starving, but Jake reassures them that their families and the school staff will definitely be looking for them and might send a rescue team or even a helicopter. Sam feels relieved, saying they'll probably be on the news. That night, they gather around a fire, hungry and freezing. Felix reminds them of the story of a sports team whose plane crashed in the Andes Mountains, and when the cold and hunger became unbearable, they were forced to eat the bodies of their dead teammates. The story makes everyone more anxious, and Felix tries to cheer them up by suggesting they listen to his song to relax, but he's the only one enjoying it. Andy says there's no way that song will help anyone calm down. In the morning, they wake up and start walking again, trying to find a way back to their village. Suddenly, the storm hits, and they run until they encounter a man living in the forest named Roland, who thinks they're attacking him and tries to defend himself. Jake quickly tells him they're lost and that the storm is chasing them. Roland is confused because he can't see any storm and explains that what happens in the forest doesn't always have a logical explanation. Jake asks him how to get back to the village, and Roland offers to guide them. When they finally reach the village, Roland warns them about the forest. Felix tries to find an explanation for the storm, thinking it might be caused by evil spirits. Andy insists that what he's saying is nonsense, but Felix tells him that science doesn't explain everything, while Andy mocks him, saying superstition isn't what explains everything either. Sam tells them he's confused because no one seems to be there to welcome them back, and when they check their phones, they discover there's no signal. He says their sudden disappearance and reappearance definitely aren't normal. Jake says he needs to go home because his mother must be worried about him. Andy suggests they all hug before leaving, since they went through a tough experience together, and it must have brought them closer. But Jake refuses and tells them he'll act like he doesn't know them or has ever met them, and if anyone tries to talk to him, he'll slap them. Jake goes home and discovers his house key doesn't work. At the same time, Sam arrives at his house and notices his siblings ignoring him. Andy gets home and is shocked to find that his sister has taken over his room. When Felix returns home and sees his brother Oscar, he's stunned to find that Oscar doesn't remember him, and he's walking again, able to stand on his own legs. When Felix tries to hug him, Oscar gets scared and tells him to stay away. Then we see Jake sneaking into his house through the back door, only to find everything inside changed. His mother isn't there, and a strange man is living in the house. He rushes out and asks a neighborhood kid named Tilly about his mother. Tilly looks confused and says he doesn't even know who Jake is, so how would he know his mother? Jake takes Tilly's phone and tries calling his mother, but the number is out of service. He takes Tilly's bike, promising to return it, and asks him to tell his mother he's looking for her if he sees her. Jake heads to the police station to report his mother missing, but the officer there doesn't seem to understand what he's talking about. When the officer asks for her name, Jake tells him her name is Sarah, and his father's name is Gary. The officer looks puzzled and goes to tell another officer named Gary about the situation. Jake is shocked to see that his father, the man who used to be lazy and irresponsible, is now a police officer. Before his father can see him, Jake runs away from the station. While walking down the street, Andy finds him and tries to talk. Jake says he just wants to understand what happened to his life after they got lost in the forest. Andy tells him to go home, and Jake insists that's the problem. Andy explains that when he got home, he expected to be in trouble for coming back late, but the problem was much worse. His sister attacked him, thinking he was a burglar. And when his mother and grandmother came down, they both chased him out. They didn't recognize him at all. Jake admits it's sad, but says he has to go find his mother. Andy tells him something strange must have happened to all of them in the forest. Just then, Sam arrives and says something weird happened to him too. He explains that when he saw his parents, neither of them remembered who he was. Jake says he doesn't care what's happening to them. His mother is missing, and a stranger is living in their house, so he has to find her. Andy tells him that even if he finds his mother, there's an 80% chance she won't remember him either, but Jake refuses to believe it. Andy says they'll help him find her. Jake finally agrees to listen to Andy's theory. Andy says it's possible that when they got lost in the forest, all their families suffered a collective hysteria. Jake says that doesn't make sense, but Andy explains that something similar once happened in a village in China, where all the men thought they had disappeared. And the shock manifested as shared memory loss. Sam then starts to wonder what might have happened to Felix. Andy tells them that if Felix went through the same thing they did, then all four of them must be connected somehow. When they arrive at Felix's house, they're surprised to see him sitting there eating as if nothing ever happened. He tries to act normal, but they're shocked when Oscar walks out, now fully able to walk, and Felix's mother treats him like one of Oscar's friends. Felix takes them aside and admits the truth. His mother and brother don't recognize him at all. Andy tells him that their families must have suffered collective memory loss due to the trauma of their disappearance. but he still can't explain how Oscar suddenly regained the ability to walk. Jake says none of this helps him find his mother, and he decides to leave and look for her himself. Just then, Ellen appears, looking completely different, and when Felix calls out to her, she doesn't remember him either. Meanwhile, Jake goes to the real estate office where they used to rent their house and starts arguing with the same agent who used to demand the rent, thinking the man must have evicted them. He angrily asks where his mother went, but the agent doesn't understand what he's talking about and threatens to call the police. Jake leaves frustrated, and by coincidence, he spots his mother. He's stunned to see she's working at the real estate office and doesn't recognize him at all. He quietly follows her home, only to discover she's now married to Mr. Bates, their teacher, and doesn't even remember ever having a son. Later, Sam takes the group to an old house on the edge of town where he used to play with his brother when they were kids. Andy says it's the perfect place for a hideout since every crew needs one, but Jake tells him they're not a crew. Felix finds a lantern and insists things would have been harder for them without him. That night, a strange shadowy presence watches them. The next morning, Sam is seen searching for food in the trash, and Jake tells Andy to go help him find something to eat. Andy is clearly disgusted since he has a phobia of germs. At that moment, Felix's father, Ken, shows up and angrily tells them to leave or he'll attack them, so they run back to their hideout. They sit down and eat the scraps they found in the trash. Suddenly, Jake remembers how his mother used to cook for him, and Sam tries to comfort him, saying they'll find a solution. Felix asks how they can solve a problem they don't even understand. Later, Felix, Andy, and Jake go to their school, which is empty because it's the weekend. Felix manages to unlock the door, and Andy goes to search for their names in the school records. Jake says he'll check the gym to look for pictures of himself, and Felix heads to the library to see if his name is listed there. After a while, Sam shows up and finds them trashing the gym out of frustration after realizing their names aren't anywhere in the records and that no one will ever find or punish them. Sam tells them he found proof of his existence, the carving he made with Mia on the old boat. Jake suggests taking Mia to see it, but Sam says that's impossible because she doesn't remember him. Jake then suggests photographing the carving to show her, but all their phones are dead. Sam decides to go home to get his brother's camera and his father's camping gear. With Jake's help, he sneaks into his house, takes the camera, and goes to photograph the carving clearly. Jake hopes the plan will work because it might finally make things better for all of them. Sam then goes to show the picture to Mia, but she shocks him by saying she carved those initials with her boyfriend, also named Sam. Sam returns home and discovers that another boy has taken his place. His face appears in every family photo where Sam should be. At that moment, his mother arrives, and he goes out to confront her, reminding her of their memories together. But she insists she doesn't know him. When Sam tries to touch her, she suddenly becomes weak, her hand burns, and she collapses unconscious. Sam returns to the hideout heartbroken, where Felix tells him they managed to steal food from Andy's grandfather's restaurant. Sam says he doesn't want to eat because he realized he doesn't exist anymore and has no appetite. He tells them his family replaced him with another boy and even gave him the same name. At that moment, Felix notices someone watching them, and suddenly a strange entity appears. They try to run and rush back to the hideout as the creature chases them and knocks them to the ground. They manage to get inside just in time. Felix tells his friends they just saw a ghost, but Andy is shocked and insists there's no such thing. He thinks it's just the storm trying to break in. Suddenly, the door bursts open, then everything goes quiet. Moments later, the storm starts again, and Andy tells them that even if he dies, he'll be happy because at least he experienced this adventure with them. Fear spreads among them, and Sam says he just wants to go home. The next morning, Andy wakes up and finds Sam still awake. Sam tells him he couldn't sleep because of the storm. Felix insists that what happened wasn't a storm at all, but Jake mocks him and asks if he thinks it was zombies. Felix explains that there's a strange force at work, something they don't understand. When they step outside, they're shocked to see mysterious circular patterns around the hideout. They try to figure out what happened. Jake believes it's from the storm, while Sam thinks they're tracks from a large animal. But Felix says it can't be that simple. Andy decides to go with Jake to his grandmother's restaurant to steal food. Suddenly, Andy's sister shows up and attacks him, and soon his whole family gathers around, demanding to know why he broke into their house and now their restaurant. Andy tries to remind them who he is, but his mother starts feeling weak. Andy explains that he's caught in a time rift and tries to convince them of his theory, thinking his father, who's also interested in science, might understand. Meanwhile, Felix and Sam go to a shop owned by a fortune teller bookseller named Phoebe, who sells books about the supernatural. When Sam sees her, he tells Felix he saw her before they entered the forest. She was watching them. Felix realizes Phoebe owns real spellbooks and asks to see one. Phoebe looks surprised and asks how he even knows about that book. Felix tells her he's seen it before. Phoebe warns him the book isn't meant for children, so Felix tells Sam to distract her while he sneaks into the back room and finds it. Meanwhile, Andy is still trying to convince his family by telling them detailed personal facts to prove he's their son. But his father ends the discussion, insisting everything Andy is saying is delusional, and tells his mother to call the police. At that moment, Jake bursts in to rescue Andy, and they both manage to escape. Back at the shop, Phoebe discovers Felix reading from her spellbook and snatches it away, warning him again, it's not for kids. Felix then asks her to sell him a charm to banish evil spirits. Phoebe gives him the charm, but is stunned when he calls her by name, realizing he somehow already knew it. When they return to the hideout, Felix begins performing strange rituals, while Andy continues trying to find a logical explanation for what's happening to them. He starts to suspect that everything might be a dream, and that they have to find a way to wake up before they starve to death. To prove to them that they're dreaming, Andy insists it's impossible that they fell from such a height in the forest trying to grab the map and survived without a single injury. He rushes outside and slams himself into a tree to show he won't get hurt, and to bring even stronger proof, he decides to throw himself in front of the school bus. Meanwhile, Ellen steps out of her house, listening to music as the bus approaches. The driver is distracted, trying to stop a fight between students, and doesn't see her. Just before the bus hits Ellen, Andy jumps in and pushes her out of the way. A moment later, his friends arrive. After confirming Ellen is safe, they quickly head back to the hideout. Ellen starts to like Andy after he saves her life, and she curiously asks who those four boys actually are. Later, Felix returns to the village and finds Trent bullying his brother Oscar, about to hit him. Felix steps in to protect his brother and tells him to run, but Trent gets angry and starts beating Felix instead. When Felix goes home to return Oscar's toy that Trent tried to break, Oscar tells him he's upset because now Trent will bully him even more because of Felix's interference. Felix tries to explain that he was just trying to help, but Oscar insists the only thing he wants is to be left alone. As Oscar walks Felix to the door, Felix notices a swarm of bees approaching. He tells Oscar to run inside, and when he enters the house, the bees surround the window. Felix tells Oscar that strange things like this always happen to him. He tries using a magic charm to drive the bees away, knowing Oscar must think he's acting crazy. Oscar then jokes that maybe Felix is actually an alien. Felix finally manages to escape from the bees and takes Oscar with him to Phoebe's shop, telling her the charm she sold him didn't work. He asks her to let him see the spellbook again, and Oscar tells Phoebe that Felix has superpowers and can read minds. Phoebe smirks and asks Felix what she's thinking right now. Felix answers that she's thinking about how much she hates teenagers and wishes none of them would ever come into her shop again. Phoebe is surprised because he guessed right and agrees to show him the book. She leads him into the back room, and Felix explains that the bees attacked him for no reason, just like the storm that came after him before. Phoebe tells him he's being attacked by the four elements of nature: water, fire, earth, and air. She adds that most people who visit her store only want candles or small statues, but he's different. She asks if he truly possesses a power, and Felix asks if she'll help him if he does. Phoebe nods in agreement, and Felix confirms that he really does have a special power. Phoebe gives him a talisman, telling him it will protect him from the attacks of nature, and hands him the spellbook to read the chant that activates it. Felix performs the ritual as Phoebe instructed, and when he finishes, she puts the talisman around his neck and tells him to go outside and test it. Felix steps out and is shocked to see the bees still chasing him. He runs back inside to treat his bee stings. Phoebe tells him he's been a disappointment, but Felix insists he did exactly what she told him. Oscar jokes that maybe the bees are aliens, which is why the charm didn't work. Felix actually believes him, thinking the bees might really be from another world, and that to fight them, he must use elements from another world too. Phoebe looks puzzled and asks how he plans to get elements from another world. Felix decides to return to the hideout, convinced that each of his friends represents one of the four elements of nature. Jake is tough and stubborn, representing the element of earth. Andy is thoughtful and simple, representing water. Sam is shallow and arrogant, living with his head in the clouds, representing air. Felix, of course, represents fire. He takes advantage of the bee attack to collect traces from each of his friends and then goes to a secluded spot away from the swarm to perform a spell. The ritual works. The bees vanish. When his friends can't find him, they assume he ran away and call him a coward. Oscar insists that the spell Felix performed is what saved them, but no one believes him. Later, as Felix and Oscar walk home, Oscar tells him he's okay with being friends and thinks they make a great team. After that, we we see the four boys collecting scrap metal and random junk from the streets to recycle and reuse it. When they spot Gary, they hide so he won't catch them. Jake becomes convinced that he ruined his parents' lives because without him, they seem to be living successfully and happily. Andy tells him that's not a rule. Everyone has something painful they're dealing with in life. Back at the hideout, they manage to get an old stove working and make a fire. They ask Sam to chip in and use the money he earned at the skating rink to buy some vegetables so they can cook a meal. Sam shocks them by saying he spent all the money already. Jake and Andy decide to steal food from the grocery store owned by Felix's father, Ken. Ellen arrives and decides to help Andy because she's still impressed that he saved her life. Just then, Gary shows up and starts chasing them. Jake decides to stay behind so Andy can escape and lets Gary catch him. Gary takes Jake to the station, trying to find out who his parents are, but Jake refuses to tell him, saying he doesn't know. Gary reviews the security footage and sees Andy among the teenagers who trashed the school gym. Jake insists he knows nothing about it. Meanwhile, Andy runs into the forest, but suddenly a flock of crows starts chasing him. He runs and shouts for Sam to come with him, and when they reach the hideout, they find Felix and tell him what happened, and that Jake was caught. They realize the police might find out he was with them at the school because the gym had security cameras, which could get him into serious trouble. Felix says the police will probably track them down too. So, Andy decides they need a way to erase their photos from the police database. His friends tell him that if he uses a magnet, he might be able to wipe all the data and images stored on the police computers. Sam then asks how they're supposed to get inside the station in the first place. Just then, Phoebe appears and offers to help them sneak into the police station. Their biggest obstacle, however, is the swarm of crows circling above, trying to attack them. They decide to distract the birds with food so they can escape safely. Before Jake can be transferred to a foster facility, Phoebe shows up and tries to convince Gary that she's Jake's aunt, so he'll release him into her care. Gary doesn't buy the story and insists they all come with him into the station. Outside, the crows are circling ominously, and Gary starts to look nervous. He reviews the security footage again to confirm the four boys were the ones at the school. At that same moment, Andy is inside, trying to erase the files using the magnet, while Felix uses his talisman to call on the forces of nature. Gary is shocked when the footage suddenly disappears from the computer. That night, the boys regroup at the hideout, where Sam arrives and tells them he performed a skating show and earned some money. Meanwhile, Gary is out searching for his dog, Zeus. But we see that Zeus is already watching the boys' hideout, his eyes glowing eerily in the dark. Phoebe decides to take Felix and his friends back to school, telling them that if they want the police to stop suspecting them, they have to blend in and act normal. She advises them not to do anything suspicious and offers Felix a part-time job at her shop after school. Felix is actually excited. School sounds far better than hiding out in the shack. Andy is also eager to return, saying he misses reading in the school library. As they walk in, Zeus is still secretly watching them. Once inside, Sam is shocked to see how much things have changed. Andy is now popular after saving Ellen from being hit by the bus. Sam spots Ellen waving, and his face lights up until she walks right past him and greets the other Sam, the one who has taken his place in this world. Feeling crushed, Sam walks away. Later, Mr. Bates introduces Felix and the others to the class, saying it's their first day and asking everyone to welcome them. He asks Felix to introduce himself, and Felix tells the class they're cousins taking part in an international exchange program because their parents are abroad, so they're living with their Aunt Phoebe for a while. During recess, Sam can't understand what Mia sees in the fake Sam. Felix jokes that she probably likes him because he looks just like the real one, which annoys Sam. He doesn't want anyone saying they're alike. Later, Sam talks to Jake, who teases him that the fake Sam is better at skateboarding than he is. Sam gets even more frustrated at the comparison, but Jake tells him they all need to adapt since they might be stuck in this school for a long time. Sam looks discouraged as he watches his friends fitting in easily while he's left alone. Then, he spots Mia, calls out to her, and apologizes if he ever upset her. He gives her a drawing he made of her and suggests they could build a skateboarding website together. The fake Sam sees them and starts an argument. Mia gets annoyed and walks away, saying the two Sams are exactly alike. Jake steps in to defend the real Sam, and Mr. Bates arrives, ordering both Sams to come to his office. Sam runs after Mia to apologize again, but she tells him he's just like the other one, self-centered and selfish. Sam apologizes once more, promising not to bother bother her again. Before leaving, he gives her the drawing and tells her that if she ever wants to learn skateboarding, he'll teach her. A little later, Mia returns to him and says he's really talented at drawing. Sam tells her his mother was an artist. She apologizes for calling him selfish, but Sam explains she doesn't need to say sorry every time she feels angry. She asks how he knows so much about her, and Sam tells her that where he came from, he had a girlfriend just like her, and after losing her, he realized he should have treated her better. He explains that his girlfriend once wanted to learn skateboarding, but he refused because he was afraid she'd get hurt, when in truth, he just wanted her to keep watching him. He asks Mia if that makes him selfish. She smiles and says that sounds sweet, not selfish. Suddenly, Zeus appears again, his eyes glowing red and his form twisted and terrifying, and lunges at them. Sam steps in front of Mia, promising he won't let anything harm her. At the same time, Ellen's dog shows up looking exactly the same, eyes red, snarling, and attacks her. Andy tries to protect Ellen, but she gets angry, thinking he's scaring her dog, which she's been searching for all week. Meanwhile, Felix notices chaos breaking out, students screaming and running as multiple dogs begin chasing them. Realizing it's another supernatural attack like the bees, Felix rushes to find his friends and help them escape. Felix finds that the school gate is locked, so he decides to turn back and face the dogs. He uses his talisman to summon the powers of nature and manages to calm the animals, returning them to their normal state. Oscar is amazed and begs him to teach him how he did that. Sam also asks what just happened, and Felix explains that Phoebe gave him the talisman. Sam grows suspicious, wondering if Phoebe has something to do with everything happening to them. Felix admits that she's definitely planning something he doesn't understand yet, and that's why he wants to read her Book of Shadows. Jake asks what that is, and Felix explains it's a witch's book, a place where witches record all their spells and knowledge. If Phoebe is behind the attacks they've been facing, then the spells must be in that book. Sam asks whether that means she's also responsible for them disappearing in the first place, and Felix says if that's true, the spell should be in the book too. Felix and his friends head to Phoebe's shop. He tells Andy and Jake to distract her while he and Sam sneak into the storage room to find the book. But when he notices Phoebe leaving the store, he changes the plan. He and Sam will follow her, while Andy and Jake use the spare key she always hides to search the shop for anything related to them that might have been used for magic. Felix and Sam follow Phoebe and discover she's gathering herbs near their hideout. Then she goes to Felix's house and carves a strange symbol on a tree in the garden. Felix walks closer and realizes it's the same symbol he saw during the bee attack, the very same one that appeared near their hideout during the storm, and also one he saw in Phoebe's book. Meanwhile, Andy and Jake enter Phoebe's storage room and find 4 locks of hair, one for each of them, stored in glass jars. They're convinced she's been using them in her spells. Back with Felix and Sam, they continue following Phoebe and see her enter the school, collecting traces from the dogs that had attacked earlier. Felix realizes she's gathering elements to perform another spell and figures she's heading back to her shop next. Felix and Sam rush back to confront her, fearing she may have harmed Andy and Jake. When they arrive, they attack Phoebe, believing she's the one responsible for everything, but she quickly explains she's actually trying to help them. Felix demands to see her book, and Phoebe agrees, handing it over. Sam insists she's lying and that she's the one behind all the attacks. Phoebe calmly explains she's been trying to protect them and uncover the truth about what's happening. She tells them she's discovered that a dark entity, something truly evil, has been after them, trying to destroy them. Felix begins to believe her and asks what kind of creature it is. Phoebe tells him the signs indicate that this being is trying to restore the natural order after it was disturbed by magic. Sam asks what kind of disturbance she means, and Phoebe looks at them and says they are the disturbance caused by the spell. She asks if there's anything they want to tell her. Sam insists that nothing unusual happened. They just went on a school trip, and when they came back, everyone had forgotten who they were. At that moment, Jake starts to feel ill from eating pickles he found in Phoebe's storeroom. Andy decides to help him and goes to his grandmother, convincing her to come with him because she knows how to treat people using herbal medicine. Meanwhile, Phoebe shows Felix and Sam a photo of her sister, Alice, who mysteriously disappeared 10 years ago. No one ever found her, as if she had vanished from existence entirely. Sam tells Phoebe that what happened to her sister Alice is exactly what happened to them. Felix then asks what could have happened to Alice. Phoebe explains that Alice disappeared because of magic. She was a witch who tried to create a powerful new spell, but things turned against her. She assures them that Alice is still alive somewhere. Felix asks what kind of spell Alice cast, and Phoebe says it must have been an extremely strong one. She tells him he's the only one who can find that spell and reverse it because he's the only person capable of performing real magic. magic. Although Phoebe has spent her whole life studying witchcraft, she admits she doesn't possess that power herself. She reveals that the book belongs to Alice, the only one in their family who truly had magical abilities. Felix is surprised and tells her he's only ever read from a basic book about spells, but Phoebe reminds him that he successfully used one of Alice's incantations, the one she gave him, and promises that if they help her bring Alice back, Alice will, in return, help them return to their own world. Meanwhile, Andy and Jake are at the restaurant with Andy's grandmother. She gives Jake an herbal drink to cleanse the poison from his stomach, and he starts to feel better. Andy's sister suddenly storms out of the restaurant, quitting before finishing her shift, which upsets their grandmother. Andy offers to work there instead, asking for $10 an hour and meals for himself and his friends. Later that night, when the grandmother leaves the restaurant, she's attacked and possessed by the dark entity. At the same time, Felix and Sam are having dinner with Oscar's family. Oscar, trying to bond with them, asks if they're planning to cast another spell. Felix explains that they've been asked to find a witch who disappeared 10 years ago. Suddenly, Andy's grandmother walks in holding a knife and tries to attack them, but the protective spell stops her, and she instantly returns to normal, smiling as she explains she was just coming to carve the duck for dinner. That night, on their way back to the hideout, Sam discovers that Mr. Waterloo Bates gave him a permission slip for a new forest field trip and told him to have their guardians sign it. They think about asking Phoebe to sign it for them, believing it might be their chance to recreate what happened and return to their original world. The next morning, Andy feels guilty and confesses to Jake that everything that happened is his fault. He explains that Bates was worried about the storm and wanted to cancel the trip, but Andy convinced him the weather would change. Jake tries to comfort him, saying it's not just his fault. Felix lost the map. Sam caused them to fall into the valley, so no one can say for sure who's to blame. But Andy insists he has to fix what happened and find the same time rift they fell through. When they arrive at school, Felix forges Phoebe's signature so they can join the trip. On the bus, Sam is devastated to see Mia giving the bracelet he once gave her to the fake Sam. He tells Jake he wants to return to his real world, but Jake reminds him that this might actually be the real one. Andy notices that Mr. Bates is saying the exact same words he said on the first trip and points it out to Jake, realizing that everything is repeating. When they reach the forest, they notice Bates dividing them into different groups this time. They decide to sneak away into the woods and rest at the same spot where Andy emptied his backpack before. Jake apologizes to Andy for treating him badly earlier. Andy realizes they've all changed because of the experience. Even he's not the same anymore. He used to care only about studying. At that moment, Andy notices the storm beginning again and realizes the events are repeating. They decide to head in the same direction they went the first time. They fall into the same valley once more, and as they wander through the forest, Felix notices the same charms hanging from the trees and suspects they belong to Alice. Felix tries to convince Andy that everything happening to them is connected to magic, not time travel. Sam tells them to focus on what matters most, finishing their journey, in hopes of returning to their real world. Suddenly, Sam and Jake fall into a trap, and Felix's talisman slips from his hand. At that moment, Roland appears. He's the one who set the trap to catch wild animals. They ask him for help. Meanwhile, Felix searches for the talisman and discovers a strange glowing portal. Suddenly, the dark entity possesses Roland and turns him against them. Felix tries to summon the power of nature to protect his friends and shouts for Andy to get to the talisman. Andy manages to grab it and calls out to Felix, who recites the incantation. A bright light flashes, and Roland collapses, freed from the entity's control. He regains consciousness and admits he finally believes in magic. He warns them that the forest is dangerous and tells them to leave immediately, but they insist on staying overnight to recreate the events of the first trip. Later, Roland returns with Mr. Bates, who forces them to go back with him. When they arrive at the village and return to their hideout, they discover that Gary is looking for them, so they decide to run away. As they move through the woods, Sam hears a strange voice calling his name. The voice tries to convince him to leave his friends, saying they don't understand what he's going through. Sam ignores it and continues with the group. Eventually, Felix and his friends go to Phoebe's house, where he apologizes for going into the forest without telling her. Inside, he shows her a mysterious spell he found there and asks if it belongs to Alice. Phoebe looks shocked and asks where they found it. Andy explains that you have to fall into a valley to reach the place where the spell was discovered. Felix adds that he also found a portal that might be connected to Alice. Phoebe confirms there's a strong link between them and Alice, saying she can help, but in the morning, as she needs to rest. Felix asks if they can stay the night, and she agrees. The next morning, Phoebe hands Felix the book and tells him to find the spell that caused her sister's disappearance. Felix asks how he'll know which one it is, his, and Phoebe tells him he'll feel it, because he's a true witch. While reading, Felix finds a spell related to the 4 elements of nature, but hides it from Phoebe, asking if he can keep the book to study it further. Phoebe refuses, saying she can't let it out of her hands. Just then, Gary arrives at the door asking if she's seen the boys. Phoebe calmly tells him they went to school. Jake overhears her and suggests they actually go there to avoid suspicion. Meanwhile, the dark entity possesses Mia. She enters the classroom and, when she touches Sam's hand, he suddenly sees Felix's talisman appear in glowing symbols across the blackboard. The words rearrange themselves into one command: destroy it. Mia tells him that if he wants to return home, he must destroy the talisman. Sam snatches it from Felix and, with Mia's help, runs to the workshop. Before he can smash it, Andy and Jake arrive, begging him to stop, explaining that the talisman is what's keeping them safe. Sam refuses to listen and shatters it. At that same moment, the entity controlling Mia attacks Felix while he's alone. Sam rushes back and realizes Mia is possessed. He tries to free her and protect Felix, but she strikes him and chases Felix through the building. Sam, Andy, and Jake retreat to the workshop and desperately try to repair the talisman. When they bring it back to Felix, he realizes its magic is gone. Mia bursts in again and attacks them, but they manage to trap her inside the workshop and escape. That night, Felix sits alone with the witch's book, studying it intensely. Finally, he finds a spell, one that could reverse the magic that caused their shift into this other world and bring them back to their real one. The next day, Jake realizes it's Mother's Day, so he decides to buy a gift from Phoebe's shop to give to his mother. When he arrives, he offers to help Phoebe with her work and starts chatting with her, surprising her by how much he knows about her life. When Sarah, his mother, asks how he knows all that, Jake tells her that Mr. Bates always talks about her. Meanwhile, Sam and Felix are searching for Jake. By coincidence, they see his mother taking part in the Mother's Day festival, so they decide each of them will buy food from their own mother's booths at the event. But when they approach and touch them, each mother suddenly collapses with strange symptoms, growing weaker by the second. Jake later rushes to check on Sarah and is horrified to find her unconscious, with strange marks on her hands. Felix and the others go straight to Phoebe's shop and tell her that the dark force is now attacking their mothers. Phoebe checks her book and explains that what's happening is connected to the boys themselves. Felix realizes they need to cast a protection spell to save their mothers and asks each of his friends to bring him something personal that connects them to their mothers from their previous life. They all meet later at the hospital after gathering what he asked for. Andy brings the only photograph his mother owns of his grandmother. Sam brings his mother's favorite paintbrush, the one she uses most when she paints. Felix brings his mother's gardening tool, the one she always uses to remove weeds because she loves plants. Jake brings the first gift his father ever gave his mother, amazed she still kept it after all those years. They perform the spell, and Felix calls on the forces of nature. Light fills the room as their mothers awaken, healed and free from the dark entity's influence. As they leave the hospital, Felix and his friends are relieved. He finally feels proud for saving his mother and his friends' mothers. When Sarah returns home, she's surprised to find a Mother's Day gift from Jake, a dolphin statue, because he remembered how much she loves dolphins. Meanwhile, Felix and his friends are back at Phoebe's shop when Andy suddenly confronts him. He's read Felix's notes and discovered the truth. Felix is the one responsible for everything that happened to them. The scene flashes back, revealing that Felix secretly changed the team assignments before the trip, choosing Andy, Jake, and Sam to be with him. During the hike, when he sang his song, it wasn't just a tune, it was a spell. Felix's magic is what transported them into the alternate world. In the present, Sam angrily blames Felix for bringing them to this world and pretending he didn't know what was happening all along. Felix finally confesses that he only cast the spell to help his brother Oscar walk again. He never imagined it would actually work. Sam loses his temper, furious that Felix's mistake caused all the suffering they've endured, and storms out. Phoebe then asks Felix about the spell he cast. He admits that it was meant to reverse Oscar's accident, the one that left him in a wheelchair, but he didn't realize the magic would erase all of them from their world. He also reveals that he chose Andy, Jake, and Sam because he knew each of them had hidden magical potential. Felix insists that the talisman is the key to returning home, but to restore its power, they must repeat the ritual several times. Meanwhile, Mr. Bates is seen talking to Gary, telling him they need to arrest the students who vandalized the gym. Gary, clearly drunk, nods in agreement, but can barely focus. Back with the group, Felix and his friends attempt the spell again, but the talisman doesn't react. Felix studies it closely and realizes the truth. The ritual requires a fifth element, the spirit. Without it, the magic cannot be completed. Felix realizes that Oscar is the fifth element, the spirit. Phoebe explains that Oscar is the key to the entire spell, the bridge between both worlds, the living link that keeps them connected. Just then, Gary arrives to arrest the group. When they step outside, Mr. Bates insists on taking Felix to the station himself, since the police car is full. Felix quickly notices that Bates is acting strange, his eyes dark, his voice cold, and realizes he's under the control of the dark entity. Felix bolts, escaping toward Phoebe's shop. Phoebe urges him to run to Oscar while she stays behind to stall Bates. Bates attacks her violently, possessed and relentless, before chasing after Felix. Meanwhile, Jake and Gary arrive at the station, where Jake desperately tries to convince him that they've been cursed and trapped in another world. He tells Gary that, in reality, he's his son. And to prove it, he explains that Bates is now possessed and hunting Felix. Suddenly, a call comes into the station reporting that Bates is chasing two teenagers. Jake realizes it must be Felix and Oscar. Felix soon reaches the station with Oscar, only to find Jake and the others already gone with Gary, out searching for him. He and Oscar flee back toward Phoebe's house, but on the way, Bates intercepts them and takes control of Oscar's mind, forcing him to help capture Felix. Ellen and Mia witness everything and rush to tell Sam and the others. When they reach Phoebe's shop, they explain what happened, and Sam finally admits the full truth about Felix and the spell that brought them here. At the same time, in the real world, Bates organizes a search party with the parents of the four missing boys. Though it's been 11 days since their disappearance, none of the parents have given up hope. They decide to enter the forest themselves to keep searching. Back in the parallel world, Phoebe gathers magical supplies with Felix's friends, preparing to rescue him. Andy asks if Bates kills Felix, will the curse end? Phoebe says it's possible, but it could also erase them all from existence completely. Jake insists they have to save Felix, saying he won't let his mother stay married to a murderer. Andy agrees that Felix made a terrible mistake, but doesn't deserve to die for it. They try to figure out where Bates might have taken him and realize it must be the forest, the place where the spell first began. At the same time, Gary catches up with Bates's car, manages to stop it, and frees Felix. But Bates turns to Gary, transferring the curse into him and binding him to the dark force. Now possessed, both Bates and Gary, along with Oscar, hunt Felix together. Felix stumbles upon Roland in the woods and confesses everything, that all of this was his fault, that he never meant to hurt anyone, and that he's ready to surrender himself to the dark entity to end it all. Roland refuses, telling him that giving up won't fix anything. He has to make things right. He promises to help him. Moments later, Bates, Gary, and Oscar arrive. Felix tells Roland to find the others and bring them to him before he loses control. The possessed men tie Felix to a tree and begin a dark ritual meant to restore order by destroying him. A storm rages overhead as lightning strikes the ground. Just then, Felix's friends arrive and confront the entity. Felix struggles to activate the talisman to protect them. As the ritual intensifies, a blinding light flashes, and Alice appears. Phoebe recognizes her instantly. Alice tells Phoebe that she must help her restore balance. Andy realizes the shocking truth. Alice is the dark entity. Felix yells for his friends to stay away from her and urges them to sing his song with him, the same one that started everything, because only by joining their voices can they make the spell strong enough to defeat her. Suddenly, the storm grows stronger, and a blinding flash engulfs everything. The boys lose consciousness. When they finally wake up, they find themselves back in their own world, the same forest, but calm and familiar again. Dazed and confused, they look around and see Mr. Bates and their parents searching for them among the trees. Realizing they've truly returned home, they run to their families, overwhelmed with relief. Each of them is embraced tightly, tears mixing with disbelief and joy. Days later, strange things begin to happen. By coincidence, they each discover they now possess control over one of the four natural elements, the same forces they once invoked. Felix realizes he can summon and control fire. Sam can command the wind. Andy learns he can shape and move water. And Jake finds he can bend the earth beneath his feet. The connection to their otherworldly experience hasn't disappeared. It's changed them forever. Sometime after, Felix visits Phoebe's shop with Oscar, hoping to tell her everything and to thank her. But when they arrive, the store is empty. The lights are off, the shelves are bare, and a sign on the door reads, "Closed." Phoebe is gone without a trace. Oscar tells Felix he can still feel something strange inside him, as if the magic hasn't fully ended. Felix begins to sense it too, a faint warmth in his hands, a whisper of energy that feels alive. Far away, deep in the forest, a shadow moves among the trees. It's Alice. Her eyes glow faintly as she raises her hand toward the horizon. The air trembles. She's trying to reach Felix, trying to reopen the bridge between worlds. The spell that once trapped them isn't over. It's awakening again, because now each of the four boys carries a piece of her power, and somewhere in the silence of the forest, the faint echo of Felix's song begins to play once more.